What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I'm your host, Alex Van Aken, and today I'm joined by Marcus Stewart. Hello, Marcus.
Hello. I am feeling fantastic today. You didn't ask, but I'm letting you know.
Yeah, you're right. I should have asked. I'm a selfish lover. It's my fault.
I respect that. We got to love ourselves before we can love others, right?
Yeah, exactly. Kyle Hilliard, how are you?
Thank you so much for asking, Alex. I really appreciate you being thoughtful about my day and what's going on. I'm doing good.
I really do care.
It's a good week for video games, man. Dead Space tomorrow, the hi-fi whatever beat rush, I keep forgetting what the third word is, that's out suddenly. Yeah,
I don't know why I keep calling it hi-fi res, but it's hi-fi rush, I think.
Yeah,
but a lot of games. And rounding out the show, we've got a special guest who will be joining us for the first half of the show. It's returning guest Kahlief Adams. How you doing, Kyle?
What's good? Thank you so much for having me. It is wonderful to be rocking with all of you, and now that you said that you are a selfish lover, knowing that you have such a beautiful singing voice, I need the remix to Easy Lover from Phil Collins to come from
my God,
from Van Aken at some point in this life. If there's, look, I'm not asking for early birthday presents, but I'm saying if I got a little bit of that, you don't have to put it public. You just send it to me and text me. You have my number.
Awesome.
It'll be amazing.
Yeah. Have you ever been compared to Phil Collins before?
No, but I've actually been listening to Phil Collins a little bit lately. Just, was in the mood. I think I'm on like Phil Collins TikTok, which is a weird sentence to say.
Yeah.
But I get a lot of like lore videos about Phil Collins and
is it him?
His career.
Like
it's
like is he's on TikTok?
that'd be even better. Just his like autobiography.
Wait, did I miss something with Phil Collins? I mean, is this a Dead Space 3 reference? Is that what we're talking? Because Phil Collins was the music in the Dead Space 3 trailers. Yeah.
Wait, what?
It was. Yeah,
I don't remember.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
It's like
wow.
Isaac walking up on the snow and it's all crazy, and Phil Collins kicks in. It's like
In the Air Tonight.
It's like, well, I don't think it's that.
Necromorphs jumped out.
It's like I don't know if this tone works, but it feels right.
Was that when they were like everybody was trying to chase like the Dead Island trailer?
Yes,
maybe
sort of vibes.
Yep.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Was it like a sad version of his song?
Yeah,
it's like around the trend of let's take a song people like and make it sad.
Yeah.
I totally derailed the beginning of the show. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Kahlief,
you've been making the rounds because the Spawnies are coming up, which is your award show that you do every year. You've been doing it real big this year. Tell us about the Spawnies. What's going on?
Yeah, it's been a really fun couple of weeks of doing promo for the show. It's been great. The show was going to drop on January 30th at 6 p.m. PST at twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe. You'll be able to check out me and Rihanna Manuel Pena coming back for the two-time co-host spot and rocking with me.
That's this Monday.
That's this Monday coming up, so not too far off in terms of where we are in the month, but yeah, it's just a lot of fun of getting a chance to kind of like reimagine what a video game award show can be and how do you kind of add layers of fun and black and brown culture and kind of fulfilling the idea, the aspirational goal of having a show where from the time that you start that show, everyone you see from top to bottom is from either underrepresented community or from a marginalized group. And it's just a lot of fun to be able to kind of like rethink of what that pattern is and how you can subvert it and make it cool and dope and what I like to call for the culture, as we say.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the show itself. Is it purely awards? Are you, I remember last year you and Rihanna were kind of like had these like thoughtful kind of commentaries while kind of giving out these awards, and the award titles are always super fun too. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, so we've rounded up to a baker's dozen this year. We're at 13 awards. We added a couple of new categories, one being our Crystal Biscuit Award, which is the kind of looking forward into the future, most anticipated game. We also have our Be Water My Friend, a reference to the amazing Bruce Lee quote, because I'm a huge fighting game fan, and we never had a fighting game category before. So now we have one.
That's surprising, knowing you.
You know what? It's one of those things of like when you're building out a show, you're just like, okay, did I forget anything? But you know what? It was great because this past year we had like such a great roundup of fighting games. I was like, oh, we are totally missing something by not having a fighting game category in our show. So we put that in this year, which is super fun. And yeah, it's going to be like, format is going to be fairly similar to last year. I don't think it's going to stray too hard from where we were. But one of the biggest things is, you know, first year we did it all in the pandemic. Well, we're in the pandemic, but you know, we did it isolated and virtually in that way. And this year we did it live in person with each other.
That's awesome.
In a wonderful space that you'll all see on the live show. But I think that added another layer of dopeness to the show. I think, you know, Ree is one of the most brilliant creators and personalities in this industry. And I think, you know, I was looking at some of the footage that we got back, and I was like, wow, she is really good at all of this. And I'm hoping that this just continues to try to find ways to propel her into more places to be able to do more of that work. But I think, again, the foundation is, you know, I think for most award shows, you don't get a chance to really hear developers kind of talk a little bit longer than usual before they get the music and the hook. And our show is hopefully going to do a little bit more of that to kind of give them a little bit more space to talk about what they do. And while also, like, you know, our presenters as well, you know, we have folks like Max Rhymes doing something dope. He's a fantastic creator on the Facebook platform. He's doing a really dope DJ set to kind of begin our show.
That's sick.
You know, we're doing, Aaron Ashley Simon, you know, co-owner of XSET, is going to be on our show presenting this year. I am Brandon. We have a lot of amazing folks who are in this space, both kind of larger and on the come up, to broaden out that conversation too, of like, again, we want our show to be a launch pad for not only good games that you might have gotten a chance to play in the last year, but a lot of dope faces and new personalities that you might not have known about, so that you get a new understanding of like, what is our impact in the video game industry as people of color and from folks from underrepresented groups of folks. So that's still the hope. We have a really dope music segment that's not just the Max Rhymes thing that I've been holding on to for a minute. We have a couple of surprises if you are, you know, listening to this right now and you saw some of the energy that was on Twitter today about Dead Space, and we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But you know, there's some more energy towards roasting a wonderful friend of ours that we have in common that might pop up in our show too. So a lot of good energy is going to be in the Spawnies again this year, and just really excited about all those pieces.
Hell yeah! So Monday, January 30th at what time?
6 p.m. Pacific time. That is 9 p.m. Eastern. So East Coast folks, don't be too mad at me. We won't have a crazy long show. It's not going to be a 3-hour show where you're up till midnight. We'll probably end out around like 11 o'clock because we'll do the main show. And then we have a 30-minute post show where we hang out with the chat and hang out with the audience and talk about what just happened. So
awesome.
It'll be a quick in and out. You'll be able to go to sleep and not be too tired the next morning.
And twitch.tv/SpawnOnMe.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Awesome.
We're partnering with Twitch this year. They are hosting us in the biggest and brightest way. We'll be on the front page of Twitch.
Awesome.
Doing it live. Our friends from Xbox and the Zynga Black Resource Dev Group are also helping to sponsor our show this year as well. So it's also great to have some heavy hitters in the back pocket helping us to do some really cool stuff. And also, one big part of the show, actually, one of the biggest parts of that show is we worked with a technology partner called Grab Labs. And this year, all of our voting is fan voted, is coming from the fans. So our nominees were voted in by the fans. Our winners were voted in by the fans. So if there are things that you don't like about that show, that means you got to vote next year. You can't be mad at me and Rihanna for what went down in the show. But I think, you know, looking at and thinking
no complaining this year either, right? They voted. So
yeah, you can't complain. You can't be mad. You know, if you're upset, you gotta look at your fellow person and turn to them on the internet and be like, yo, why'd you vote for that? But I love that aspect of the show this year. I think that brings the show, you know, as a way that is growing, and giving us more space to play. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what people voted for and how the reactions go down in the chat once they see it.
Hell yeah. Well, let's get into the rest of the show. Marcus,
Hi.
You reviewed Dead Space for us, the remake. You gave it a 9 out of 10.
Yes.
Tell us your overall thoughts real quick, and then we'll pass it to Cobb before he has to get out of here as well.
Yeah. Hey, you remember how like in 2008 Dead Space came out and that game was really good?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's 2023 and Dead Space is still really good. It turns out.
I was skeptical. You just never know.
Yeah. It's funny. I've revisited Dead Space, the original Dead Space, twice in the last like 10 months because I replayed a good chunk of it for the Callisto Protocol cover story we did because I was second on that. And then, when I knew I was going to be reviewing this, I was like, okay, let me fire it up again. And both times that I ran through it, I was always struck by like, man, this is aged pretty well. Like I could sit down and play this whole thing and just be totally fine. And, having such a strong foundation to work with certainly helps because, the idea of a remake for this game, it was like, I don't think you guys really need to do a ton. I think, just make this look nicer and maybe tighten up the controls to maybe match like third-person shooters of today. And that's largely what they did. There's a little more to it, but those were kind of the big things that I think a lot of fans wanted out of this, and they knocked it out of the park. Like, it looks fantastic. The graphical facelift, like everything, the necromorphs especially.
Yeah, I want to jump on that, Marcus. Like seriously, like maybe the best looking game I've played like in my life. Like which is like hyperbolic. Absolutely. Like I don't say that lightly, but I think it's a combination of like the lighting is fantastic, right? And it also obscures a lot of things, right? They can shroud a lot of stuff in darkness if they don't want you to look at it. And then I also think the sort of industrial setting of the Ishimura is just good for video game graphics, for digital graphics. I think they can just render that kind of thing really well. Like metal is something graphics are just good at doing, and when the whole game takes place inside of metal,
make it shiny.
It just works. Like it's been a long. I mean, even like God of War Ragnarok, I looked at and I was like, oh, this looks great. This looks really great. But Dead Space was the first time in a while that I was like, oh my god, like this looks incredible. Just like shining the flashlight down a hallway and stuff. It's nuts.
Yeah, like Dead Space back in the day was up there of like best graphics and stuff. Like it looked amazing at the time. And yeah, I agree, Kyle. And I called out the lighting specifically in my review of like, I think it really is the glue that brings the graphical update together because there's so many, like, they love putting you in pitch blackness and just having you rely on like the little light on your gun to like walk down these narrow hallways and you're just hearing all of these terrifying like grunts and moans and bangings. And they do some really fun audio tricks of like, I think one's crawling nearby, but I can't tell. And sometimes nothing happens, and then sometimes everything happens. Yeah, it's just the Ishimura just looks so much better now. And it reminded me that it's up there of like, at least for me, one of my favorite just video game settings is that ship. Just the sense of place it has. Like, it's the cliche thing of saying it's a character, right? But it really is in this case. And then just the gameplay, like the dismemberment stuff was always really cool back in the day, and I've really forgotten how much fun it is when you get deep into the game and you've upgraded some of your weapons enough and you have like a larger arsenal, and they start introducing more enemy types and they throw them at you in different combinations where you're kind of strategically like, okay, if I take this guy out first because he's going to be a problem, he's got the explodey arm, I could cut his arm off and then I could throw his explodey arm at these big guys,
and then you just drop everything when those bats show up. That's like the only way I can describe
oh
it.
Yeah,
it's
the
like,
scramble.
I got a million guys on my left. I'm sorry, I gotta focus on this bat. I just gotta throw all my ammo at you.
And what's cool is I love the alternate firing modes on all the weapons. Like I really liked using the little firewall that you can shoot for the flamethrower. It's really good for corridors, and it's also very satisfying to have like a bunch of them charging at you and you're just like, nope. And you shoot that little wall of fire and you just watch them burn to death and you're like, yeah. But like the shooting feels good. Like they tightened it up to where it feels like a game that would release today, while like the guns feel punchier, the plasma cutter feels better than it ever has. And like some of the bigger stuff is like the level design, which is interesting because it's like the bigger differences are there, but it's also the more subtle ones. Like I said in my review, that unless you replayed Dead Space relatively recently, or you just have like a really good memory of how it was laid out, you're probably not going to notice the level design changes immediately. But it's the same general layout of the ship, but it's more interconnected in a way where you don't need to use the tram sometimes to get from like one district to the other one. You can kind of walk your way there. which feels nice because it just makes it feel like a more like organically connected area. Like the tram is still there if you want to just quickly get across to, you know, one side of the ship to the other. But I kind of like that you can just walk your way to like, I'm just going to go to hydroponics or whatever. You know, it's more dangerous, but yeah, there's some benefits to it because this game also lets you backtrack to the other areas a lot more than in the first game. So, and the reason for that is that they're side quests now. There's not a ton from what I've said. I think I did all of them, but I don't know for sure because I was being pretty thorough trying to finish them all up. But you know, there's like different logs you can find, and they all just kind of serve to expand existing characters of like, hey, remember that weird like human engineered necromorph that could regenerate? Like, you can go find out the whole story behind like what happened, how did that happen and stuff. If you chase down these audio logs and they're all in different districts, or there's like a thread where you can follow Nicole, who's like your girlfriend, like what she's like her investigation is like figuring out what was going on. It's kind of pulling and this game does a lot where it's pulling some lore stuff from the other Dead Space games that came afterwards to kind of tighten up the continuity a bit of like, okay, now that they have all of this lore that was established after the fact, we can retroactively include some things, you know, from maybe like Extraction or like, cause I think people forget how much lore there is in Dead Space. Like that was like a whole media thing.
There's an animated movie.
Yeah,
like, there's comics. Like a 90-minute animated movie that you don't need to watch, but it exists.
Yes. So it's cool to see them kind of draw some of that in to make this a little more cohesive thing. Isaac can talk now, which, you know, he couldn't in the first game.
I'm so grateful for that too. It was so nice to hear him be like, I don't want to talk to any more unitologists. Like, I think that's like one of his lines, and I was like, yeah, Isaac, tell him finally.
That's what I say when I go to church. I'm done talking to you guys.
They're like, what's unitology?
Yeah. Kahlief, you disclaimer, there is a reference to one of your ongoing jokes online in the game.
Is there?
Yes, there is. There's a cock and cook joke on a wall, and I've seen screenshots even before my friends were reviewing the game. They sent me a screenshot privately.
Yeah,
and I was like, "Oh my god, they actually put that in there."
Really?
What are your thoughts on Dead Space so far?
Well, the thing I love about this conversation is a lot of the conversations that I had and a lot of the folks who, disclaimer, a lot of folks worked behind the scenes in what EA had as their creator council for Dead Space, and I was lucky enough to be one of the folks in that. So we basically worked with the folks at Motive for over the past 2 years to kind of like consult and give them good feedback about, you know, things that we loved about the series and especially the first game. And we had this really fantastic back and forth between the dev team and ourselves to talk about, you know, what was the things that we were hoping to see kind of pull through. And so many of the parts you all have been talking about nail exactly so many of the aspirational parts that they had hoped to kind of pull in, but also just like from a gameplay perspective, just nail the atmospheric bits in there, the audio stuff in there. My favorite thing in the new Dead Space is the intensity director, which totally changes the way that you play that game in actual ways, especially for a remake where you have an idea of where all the scares are, but the intensity director changes that in actual tangible ways. That changes up how you think about where you go and how you play. The cock and cook thing, I don't remember asking for that specifically. I might have said something in passing in one of our group meetings, and then I got a screenshot in our Slack that we had. And
can you contextualize this a little bit, because I don't know what this is. Yeah.
So a friend of Spawn on Me and friend of the internet, Paris Lilly, who is one of the members of XCast and the Gamertag Radio podcast, we've known each other for over a decade in the industry, and you know the TLDR version of it is for the past almost 3 years now we've been going back and forth on Twitter about like who can cook and who can't cook. That culminated in, you know, me putting up a big video that had like Cedric the Entertainer in it and Kurt Angle in it and a couple other folks in it. Some folks you might have known. And then he got me back by going on the Xbox showcase that he was helping to co-host.
I forgot about that.
And put up he put up a controller when they were doing their controller lab redo. And on the bottom you can inscribe something on it, and it said "Ka can't cook" on it. So he like immediately won the internet and got me and ethered me in the best way possible. So for that time, we've been going back and forth and trying to scheme and plot about how we can get each other back. And this wasn't a thing that I like did, so it makes it even cooler to see that it made it into a game that I love and adore. And it also kind of now in my mind has forever lore about the Ishimura of like whomever was dying after eating his food described this on the wall right before they died, to kind of give their last opinion about
put meme on wall.
Oh yeah, like must give last opinion before I die about this really dumb thing about who can cook and who can't.
I hope it gets its own wiki page on the Dead Space wiki.
I pray. I will light candles. I will figure out. I'll pay somebody to do it. But it's it was a great moment, not only for me as a Dead Space fan, and it's also just great to have a really fun thing kind of pop up on the internet when the gaming discourse has been very, very dour in the past couple of months. But it's also just like really cool to see something that came out of a really dumb idea kind of continue to push forward, even though I know people are sick and tired of it. But it's nice to see something between two friends continue to move in this fun way. And again, like I said, it's not over yet. I'm sure that he is already plotting and scheming to figure out a way to get me back. But
Dead Space 2.
Dead Space 2 remake is going to be something in there. We'll have a whole ship in there.
He has to carve it on like the actual moon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The funniest part was somebody today on Twitter was saying, it was like, I have a feeling the best way to get Kahlief back is if someone put something in Starfield. And I was like, oh, that would be really good, actually.
It's one of the millions of planets is somehow just that. It's just his planet.
Yep. It's like in the shape of my face. It's just called Can't Cookington or some nonsense.
It's like Ego the Living. It's just him talking as a planet.
Yeah, something. And you know what? And it would be fantastic. I would love it. It would be super, super cool. So that's where that kind of reference comes from. But I again, like, I think this game is doing stuff that I'm hoping other remakes will crib. Like the intensity director is important. I think, like you said, the graphical layer of that is really important.
Yeah. So I'm somebody who I rented Dead Space 1 on Redbox for a night. Never beat it, but I played through the first like hour or two back in the day, and so I'm gonna be coming back in pretty much fresh. Is the intensity director kind of just like making it, because I know, Marcus, you mentioned there's more like backtracking if you want. Is that sort of like, does the intensity director kind of making, random encounters crop up and stuff?
Yeah, it's a little bit of that. I mean, the design for the Ishimura for this remake was that it was going to be one huge continuous ship. Like, you could go through it, like Marcus was talking about, in any kind of route that you wanted, but the intensity director would be like, where a jump scare is going to wind up being. Some of those are still scripted in the ways you need to for that continuity to the first game, but an enemy that was in a hallway in the first game may not be in that hallway in this version of the game, or it won't be in there the first time you go through that hallway, right? So, like, the lights may be off the next time you travel back to that space, and they weren't the first time you did. If you go back into a load, I remember when we were doing playtesting for some of that stuff, there was one section that I was doing a loop in, and one of the developers was saying, go back into that space and do that loop again. And I went back and did it. Lights were on. I was killed, like, in the middle of doing something. And I went back into that room, and that enemy wasn't there anymore. And the sounds that were playing in that space had dissipated in a different way. They were being triggered in a different way. I went back for a third time, and there were even more enemies in that section, and there were some other elements that had changed just in that same loop. It wasn't even a thing of, like, me reloading the space. It was just like going back into that space triggered
That's cool.
potentially new things happening. So I think that is a huge part of what makes this game so much better than the previous game, especially for fans of the first series. But now for folks who have never played it, like you were talking about, you're going to have multiple different versions of experiences throughout your gameplay that will be vastly different potentially than other people who are playing it at the same time as you are. So that to me is like brilliant and one of the coolest things about the game, and just like has me so excited for what they could potentially do with, my favorite game, which is Dead Space 2. and if they get a chance to make that in the future.
Yeah, it does a great job of like maintaining the intensity and unpredictability of the game like hours in. And yeah, like I mentioned before, like it really shone for backtracking because, you know, you clear out an entire district, or at least you think you did, and then you're going to be running around back and forth, even if you're a little bit thorough, either due to side quests or to unlock different, because there's different security key cards that you got to find. So you're like, oh, this door required level 2. I couldn't get it a few hours ago. Now I've got the key. I'm going to go back and see what's in there. So now I got to traverse this area. And every time you go back, it never feels truly safe, because sometimes I'll go back and you're like, okay, nothing's happening. I'm good. And then other times something happens where like, oh, this new enemy type that was not here the first time just popped out, and or like multiple enemies. And it never feels formulaic. It like always kept me on my toes, and you'll hear different sounds. And what's cool about it is that because you never really know what might happen, it does the thing where you, even if nothing's happening, you kind of trick yourself into thinking something might happen. Of like, I heard something. Was that sound there before? I don't think I heard that cry the last time I was here. Which is like probably what you would be doing anyway if you were in that situation in real life, of like you're just letting your mind go off the rails. So I thought that was just, like you mentioned, Kahlief, like that's just such a big part of what makes this remake work. And you know, in terms of the story stuff, like it's pretty much the same story. So if you like the Dead Space story, it's pretty much that. There are some like changes here and there, but like it's like more on the lighter side of like, oh, it's the same result. It just sort of like played out a little differently. So it's like, it's not like a huge thing, at least to me. There's one at the end or towards the end that I was like, okay, that's the same but different, but I like it better. And yeah, it's just across the board of like the spectrum of remakes, you know, when you look at like something that's like kind of 1-to-1, like maybe The Last of Us, and then on the far under end there's like Final Fantasy 7 or like maybe the Resident Evil remakes. Like those are just basically new games because they're just gameplay wise are completely different than what they were. This is kind of like maybe closer in the middle-ish, but I don't think it needs to be anything more than what it is. Like, I think the changes that they implemented were really smart, and they didn't go overboard, you know? Of like, let's just totally make this like almost unrecognizable. It's like, this is like the game that I remember, but, you know, just better, right? And that's kind of all it needs to be at the end of the day, and that's like the number one goal. Like, hey, that thing that you really loved, here it is spruced up, and it's actually better than what you remember. Ta-da. And this game is that. I'm super excited for the future, and I really hope this isn't a one-off thing that EA is like, oh, you know, I hope this sells well, or, you know, whatever. Because I would love a Dead Space 2 remake. I'm up there too. Like, I think Dead Space 2 is the best one.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love this caliber remake applied to that. Or just the new game. That would be great too. Can we just get Dead Space 4 going? I won't say no to it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, great. Well, that's going to wrap up our Dead Space remake review conversation. Kyle, you need to get out of here. But before you go, we just want to remind people the Spawnies are happening Monday, January 30th at 6 p.m. Pacific at twitch.tv/spawnonme. Where else can people go to check out you and all of your work?
First of all, thank you again for having me. It's always super dope to be able to rock with you and the rest of the GI fam. You know, again, we're on year 10. This is our 10th year of doing Spawn on Me, which is wild to say out loud. And yeah, we're thank you very much. And we're continuing to rock on the podcasting space and you know, all the podcast platforms that you can find. We are on there. We are still doing our work over at YouTube as well. youtube.com/spawnonme. And yeah, we have a lot of fun stuff coming up for this year. I think this year is going to be a pretty big one for us in terms of continuing the conversation of spotlighting people of color in the video game industry, and continue to try to find good ways to bring up smart, nuanced, fun conversations in a space that absolutely needs it. So we hope that is continuing to be the space that we occupy.
Hell yeah. Well, thanks for returning again. I'm sure we'll probably see you back on before the year's up. We got 12 months. Maybe you'll come back. There's a lot of games coming out this year.
Anytime that you'll have me, I'm down to rock.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and everybody else listening. We will be right back after a quick break. Welcome back to the Game Informer Show, everyone. We are going to get into the playlist, which is the section of the show where we talk about the games we've been playing this week. It just so happens that we've been playing a lot of the big releases, so we're going to be talking about Forspoken. Kyle reviewed that for us. We're going to be talking a little bit about Hi-Fi Rush. I'm like 20 minutes in, so I'm going to be asking questions and making small comments on Kyle's impressions because he has played a little further than me.
25 minutes.
25 minutes. There you go. I mean, the game did just come out yesterday. So we did what we could, but the game seems cool, so we wanted to talk about it. And then lastly, I might talk a little bit about a game I haven't talked about for a while on this show, Valorant. There's a new map out that I really like, and it kind of has some really neat mechanics. So we'll talk about that during the playlist, and then we will get out of here after answering a few listener emails. So let's get into your Forspoken review, Kyle. Give us the overview of the game. It's been the topic of the week, I feel like, for a couple weeks now. Listeners are probably familiar with it, but just in case, give us the top down, and then I guess let's hear your review impressions.
Yeah, so Forspoken, it's basically from the Final Fantasy 15 team, with a lot of asterisks on there where it's like, a lot of the leadership left, I don't know how long they were working on it, what teams overlap, etc. But it is the developer of Final Fantasy 15. But it's a much different game. It's an action game where you play as this woman named Frey, who's this New Yorker who gets dropped into a magical world and has to figure out her place in that world and where she fits in. And by the way, she has like magical powers when she's in there, and she's not totally sure why. So that's kind of like the summary of the game. As far as my review goes, I gave it a 7.5, which on the Game Informer scale is like okay, right? It's like it's fine. It's not amazing. It's also not actively terrible. And it kind of boils down to the dialogue's okay, the story's okay, the combat is kind of middling, but the parkour is fantastic. Moving around the world feels great because Frey has this crazy magical sprinting that she can do, and this climbing and leaping, and she can use this magical tether to grab onto things and launch her into the sky and spin her around. So
you're telling me there's a grappling hook in this game, Kyle?
There is indeed, yeah. And it that stuff is great, and that stuff does make up the majority of the game. You spend most of the time in the game moving from point A to point B and stuff. That's cool. That. So those other factors are kind of, they kind of bring the game down. They're a little underwhelming, but they do make up less of the game. And the thing I will say about the story is by the end, I was pretty pleased with it and where it ended up and its conclusion and where the characters were at the end. But it just takes a long time to get going. I didn't really feel invested and excited to see how the story was going to end until I was 10 hours in or something like that. And I ultimately saw credits at 15 hours.
I was gonna ask how long is this? Because I didn't know if it was a Final Fantasy length.
It's not, no. Which I thought it was going to be. I was actually bracing for it when I was assigned the review. I was okay, I'm gonna clear my plate, get everything out of the way. I remember we had morning meetings, and I was I'm playing Forspoken. I don't know if I'm gonna hit the embargo. I have no idea. And then it was a day or two later, I was I beat it. Okay, that's a perfectly reasonable length for an action video game. That makes me very
excited. Yeah. That makes me more excited to play it.
But it sounds like it's pacing's kind of if it takes that long to really get going.
Yeah, I mean the funny thing is I 15 hours to see the conclusion of the story, but I did play another 5 hours of just running around, collecting things, exploring, getting more upgrades and that kind of thing. And that was maybe the most fun the game gets is you're at the end and you kind of are mostly fully powered up and you've seen the story to its end, and then you can kind of just run around and do what you want. That's where the game is really great, well, great, maybe that's too strong a word. That's where the game succeeds.
Yeah, that's heartening because I think I was under the impression that it was very story heavy and stuff, and I'm sure it is it has its moments, but
yeah, I mean there's
to hear that the bulk of it is more of the gameplay, I guess.
Yeah, just the open
if you want it to be. I mean, the reason I hit 15 hours, I was talking to Jeff Markiafava, former Game Informer editor, who's over at MinMax now, and he was at 15 hours, and he wasn't even. I don't think he was even like halfway through the story, just because he was getting so distracted on the way to every area, because he was like, "Oh, I want to do all this stuff," where I was like, "Oh, I want to see the story," so I kind of beeline to all those spots. So that's like almost a recommendation for me. Is just kind of like just focus on the story first, because that'll get you to a point where you're like leveled up. That's the fastest way to get upgrades and the cool upgrades and stuff like that. And then you'll hit a point at about the 10-hour mark where the world's open for you. You have tons of power-ups. Then you can kind of decide if you want to tackle all the little side stuff, on the way to every destination.
It reminds me of like Red Dead 2, where like that game took a long time to like really open up its systems, and you were telling people like, hey, like pretty much just don't do anything, like beeline the story until you get to like that first camp, because even then you think that you have complete freedom, but you actually don't. Like all the more interesting systems don't open up till you get to that first camp. So I'm actually glad you said that.
I mean, it's not a bad recommendation for all open world games, honestly. It's just like stick with the main path for a while, because you're gonna hit walls where you think that you can do more than you can. But it's like,
you're like, I'm bored now, I wish I had more to do, and it's like, you gotta get those upgrades. I'm probably not as disappointed as others, because I've played this game twice before. Like I played a pretty meaty demo at Tokyo Game Show.
Oh, I thought you meant like you had played through it twice already. I was like, damn.
Oh, no. I've had a hands-on with it, like extensive hands-on
I see
with it
what
twice.
you're saying,
and I played a really big chunk of it at Tokyo Game Show, like probably like 30 minutes. And it was just the open world, go do what you want with some story stuff. And I completed it, like kind of cleaned it out, beat the big boss at the end, everything. And I remember at the time just kind of feeling like everything feels not all the way there. Like the combat feels a little messy and unresponsive in a way that I can't put my finger on. And just kind of everything, like it just feels like it just needs more time in the oven. But at that point, like it's fine, it's not out yet. Even though it's like it's coming out kind of soon, but there's still time.
I mean, in a way, the game does still kind of feel loose in that sort of hard to pinpoint way, because like she kind of moves on her own in a way that you sort of have to get used to, and combat's a little sluggish on purpose. But I don't know if that was the right call.
She feels jittery.
Yeah.
At least then, I don't know. I guess maybe now too. I guess, but
I mean, it's not all cleared up. You're right. It's like kind of what I'll say. But like by the end, and like I said, the parkour in particular, once you get a good handle on it and you know all her abilities, it feels really good. Like that stuff I like.
Yeah, and
is it something similar to like Infamous Second Son in terms of its like movement?
It's funny you mentioned that, because like I did kind of think of Infamous a little bit, just in the way of like climbing and stuff like that. Infamous was more about finding like rails to jump onto to kind of glide you around the city, where Frey can kind of just from any point she can just sort of burst into speed. She doesn't
kind of
need
just
to
hold a button and she just bounds over everything.
Yeah, like literally, you're not relying on the environment to propel you forward in the way that you do in Infamous, which is great. Infamous is fun in that way too, because the city is designed around, the protagonist's movement, because there were a few. I think there were like 3 ultimately across all the Infamous games. But and the combat, like the way she's sort of firing stuff out of her hand, like kind of feels Infamous-y, but it's just not as smooth as Infamous.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of Infamous, but now that's a pretty good point of comparison. Yeah, it's just because I all that to say is that like I played the demo that came out publicly for everyone, which was pretty much the same demo that I played at TGS. Played a good chunk of that, and I was kind of disappointed. Like, ooh, this doesn't feel markedly different than what I played a few months ago, which that's concerning.
Blake actually DM'd me, and he was like, "Oh, when does this game like start? Like, there's so much cutscene at the beginning and like so much setting the table. When do I get to run around and do the cool parkour?" And I actually told Blake, I was like, "Look, if you just want to run around, man, maybe just grab that demo." Because that gives you all the powers like right out of the gate. You could just jump in and start running.
You missed a perfect chance to be me and be like, "Huh, you want to run around? Why don't you try touching grass?"
Oh shoot, yeah. I'll go back to that. I'll edit my conversation
on his DM. I don't know how you hang up in a DM, but something.
You just leave Slack, I guess. Kyle has left the channel.
Yeah, I still want to play it. Like I haven't fired it up yet, but I've got it. I kind of need to know how it go. Like, I need to know how the story goes, the dialogue stuff. I know there's been a huge discourse of that I'm personally just sick of at this point.
It only improves as you go on. It gives a rough first impression, story and dialogue, but it really gets better and better as you go.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that I've seen, it really doesn't stand out as anything remarkably bad compared to other games I've seen. It's just like, this is like the average Marvel TV show, some of this stuff, and I like those. So I'm not saying it's amazing either, but it's like, I've heard way worse in other games. So I don't know why we're picking on this one, but okay. Yeah, it's that weird sort of like, it's weird to see even a B game because it's a Square Enix thing, but like
it's a $70 game, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that game that's average, but like interesting enough that I want to play all of it to kind of just see all of it because it's just so fascinating in just weird different ways.
It has like cult potential, right? In 5 years, we'll be like, oh, Forspoken. We didn't give that its due.
Yeah, someone's going to be yelling at you like, you really shortchanged Forspoken, Kyle.
Yeah, honestly, I think let's check back in a few years. Yeah, remind us.
Huh. All right. Well, that is our Forspoken review discussion. Of course, go and check out and read Kyle's review at GameInformer.com/reviews. I believe that URL works. I'm checking right now. If it doesn't, yeah, it does work. Okay,
just
cool.
Google Game Informer reviews. You'll find it.
Just Google Forspoken Game Informer, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. You'll be good.
Yeah, you could have ended that segment saying that we have Forspoken, by the way, Alex. It was right there.
Damn it, let's talk about it again. Let's redo it all. We're starting from the scratch. Matt, scrap all of this. Okay, let's get into Hi-Fi Rush. The game that nobody knew about before yesterday.
I think it had been kind of leaked.
There was a tiny little rumor, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit, but it wasn't like we all know this is happening.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't privy to that.
Little leak. I was not.
I missed the leak too. Yeah.
I learned after the fact that some people were waiting for it.
Well, the developers behind most recently Ghostwire Tokyo and the Evil Within series, Tango Gameworks, founded by Shinji Mikami, of course, have put out a very not Tango Gameworks game. When you think about Tango Gameworks, you think of, these very horrific, scary, and just kind of obtuse experiences. And then you look at something like their new game, Hi-Fi Rush, and it's comic book rhythm game beat 'em up.
They watched Into the Spider-Verse and were like, ooh, yeah, that looked cool.
It honestly looks like an episode of a show I would watch on like WB Kids when I was younger. It's like after Static Shock, Hi-Fi Rush coming on.
That's the block right there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Dude, Static Shock.
Yeah. Oh. In a weird way, it's almost like Tango living up to their namesake finally, because there is a lot of tangoing in this game. It will make you want to tango because of all the music. And
all right, you got to get out of here.
Really good. But we were talking during the live stream and mentioned in the chat, Kyle, that I was like, oh, this is like Guitaru Man, that like obscure PS2 rhythm game that was like really kind of like not sci-fi, but like some futuristic guitar guy.
Yeah.
But like if it was an action game, and then you said that if it had a baby with Sunset Overdrive, it's this. I was like, that is the perfect analogy. Like that is exactly what this is. But I'm curious, like, is it how close is it to either of those games?
Oh, good question. I mean, the tone and look really feels like Sunset Overdrive, for sure.
Not in its gameplay at all.
Not in its gameplay at all. And not Guitaru Man, kind of not really either, because it's the rhythm element of it, which is very cool, is almost like fully optional. Like if you just want to approach this as like a melee action game, like you can. I don't think you're going to have as much fun, but like you can totally be successful just smashing the X button and making your way through each level. But like it's basically like, I mean, it kind of like feels a little bit like Devil May Cry combat, where it's kind of like focused on like timing. I mean, I don't want to go, I'm not going too crazy, but like, you know how Devil May Cry kind of builds its combos around like long presses and short presses as opposed to like multiple buttons. there's a little bit of that in there where you want to press, like you press X on the quarter notes and you press Y on the half notes. So like you skip a beat when you're pressing Y, but you want to maintain your rhythm when you're pressing X. And then like at the end of a combo, a little circle will show up to like that you want to hit in time. And I think that's usually on the half note. I could have my music. I'm not like super, I haven't like, I know a little bit of.
No, I think that's right.
That right?
That's
okay.
what I picked up on as well. Yeah.
Okay. And the thing about it, man, like it looks fantastic, which is so funny because like I just moments ago was like Dead Space is the best looking game ever made, and then I play this and I'm like, oh my god, this looks incredible too. And it's like it's a combination of just the colors and everything, and the just the way everything moves in rhythm to the music that's happening in the background. And I'm not kidding about the Spider-Verse inspiration. Like they do that thing where they sort of animate action sequences on like with fewer frames. And it looks awesome. It looks so good. And like there's even like little comic book words that will show up when he's like swiping his hand and stuff like that. And it's just so like clean and charming in that way. And then so far it's like a linear action game. It kind of actually feels of the era of like maybe like the PlayStation 2, like of like an action, a sort of somewhat typical action game of that era where you're just making your way, you know, through a linear path of levels, not even levels, but just like on a track. You know, you fight in like a little arena setting here, you do a little jumping, you fight in a little arena setting here, you dodge some fireballs here, and you're all just like going along a path. But all of that is like set to music. So like the jumping, if you do it in the rhythm of the music in the background, you get a bonus. If you dodge with the rhythm of the music by pressing the bumper, like you can do 3 in a row as long as you're keeping with the music. And then your combos all do way more damage if you're keeping with the music. And like all of that is to say, so far, like I'm really liking it. Like it seems like this cool it feels like this cool experimental thing that someone at Tango got really passionate about. And it doesn't really feel like this full, like I don't play it and I'm like, I wish this was like an open world where I could go and like see everything this world had to offer. Like I kind of like the just being on a track and like listening to the music and focusing on that and the incredible animation. Like so far I'm very positive on it. Like
how is the how much platforming have you seen? Because I think the trailer, a lot of like the Sunset Overdrive stuff, people saw like the clips of like the character grinding on the rails and stuff, and they're like, oh, it's like, is there a lot of that stuff or a lot of platforming that at least you've encountered so far?
Not really. I mean, it's just between the sort of combat scenarios. You know, there's like there's a handful of platforms you're going to jump on. And then there was a sequence where it actually switched to 2D for a little while. So I was like platforming in 2D. I mean, not literal 2D. I mean, the camera locked to the side, right? Like 2.5D or whatever you want to call it. So it is not a platformer. Like if I were to recommend this to someone, I would be like, do you like melee action games? You know, do you like what genre would you call Bayonetta and Devil May Cry?
Oh, like stylish action.
Like it's closer to stylish action with like music being a core element, which is cool.
It don't not to you know make a pun out of the music thing, but we
don't like puns here.
It does kind of feel like Tango's like B-side, where like it's like, okay, this is like not like one of our main releases. Like we're gonna like drop this for the fans. It's gonna be a little experimental. It's gonna be like, you know, might have like a demo quality feel in terms of like, oh, this is like not a normal sound for the band, but they're kind of stretching their music, you know, their songwriting muscles, right? But then they took that B-side and had the polish of a whole studio behind it. It's like it's very polished, but it definitely gives that like you said, like a passion project or like a side project for somebody at the studio that everybody else was like, yeah, let's make this thing. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, it's funny because when you mentioned the old school sort of like 2000s era gaming feel, like I feel like there's a universe where this game came out in like 2003 and there would be a separate disc that's like a demo for the Evil Within 3 packed in, and that's how they push this like weird experimental thing off shelves. Like, hey,
that's
I know it's
really
weird, but,
funny.
You know, hey, we got this in here, you know. And then you wound up liking this game too. You're like, oh, this is fun. I only bought it for that demo for the thing I want, but this is really cool.
The Zone of Enders effect, right? That had the Metal Gear Solid 2 demo on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Crackdown did. That's right.
But it became one of my favorite games ever. May it rest in peace.
But yeah, so I mean, I'm only a little bit in. I guess the greatest danger I could see is like it becoming repetitive or too hard. You know, like maybe it stops being fun if it's a challenge. It just gets overwhelming. But so far, great first impression. 2 hours or so. Really, the moment I'm done with Dead Space, I'm going back to it.
Yeah, music good.
Yeah.
It's all licensed stuff, so it's like pop rock, and like I think even there's some like Nine Inch Nails and stuff in there.
It starts off with the Black Keys.
Yeah,
I didn't expect licensed music at all. I thought
it's mostly licensed music, maybe if not all. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's good. It's cool. It goes really well. Even if you're not a big fan of that genre, it fits the tone.
I'm looking at How Long to Beat, and apparently it's only 8 hours long.
Oh, that's great.
Sounds like a good length for what this sounds like.
Something like that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to play more.
Yeah, me too. The tutorial is like almost feels like an animated episode of a show. Like there's a lot. The presentation is really impressive. But it is lengthy. Like it feels like I'm watching a television show at some points. But so I haven't gotten through the whole tutorial, but so far what I like, it feels good. I've done a couple of the little arenas fighting, and I am eager to pick it back up later tonight and keep going.
Yeah, I'm excited. I haven't installed, so I'm excited to jump on it.
And it's worth saying this is, of course, Tango is a Bethesda published studio, right? Yeah. So therefore it is only on Xbox right now, so you can get it on Xbox Game Pass, on console and PC. I'm playing it on PC, Xbox Game Pass.
I think PC only through Windows, right? I don't think it's on Steam or Epic.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, just through Windows, through the Xbox app. That's how I'm playing it, and it's going good so far. So let's get into some housekeeping real quick before we get to a few listener questions, and then we're going to get out of here. Housekeeping always starts off with a new podcast review. And we've got our last podcast, our last from the recent batch of podcast reviews. So if you'd like to go and leave one for us, now's your chance. This week's review is from Apple Podcasts from user YZ Jamie. They left us 5 stars. The headline says perfect. And the review reads, "This podcast has perfect timing." Speaking of rhythm, perfect timing, comedy, great news, and all of this combines to make the best podcast of all time. 7 out of 5. Did my mom write this?
All time.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah, man. Take that.
Did they review 50. my One Piece game? Because I want some feedback on that. I don't know how.
So thank you, YZ Jamie, for that very, very nice review. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
leaving
Ms.
a
Van
review
Aken.
does help us out. Mrs. Van Aken.
Mrs. Van Aken.
So thank you for leaving us that review. We really appreciate it. It helps us out and helps us kind of climb a little higher in the charts.
I mean, we're the best of all time.
Well, oh yeah, we are the best of all time.
Now we're
and
just
if we are
holding the line.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, honestly, there's a lot of competition. So if we're going to hold this line, we're going to need the backing of all of our listeners, our wonderful listeners. But what I was going to say is leaving a podcast review helps. But what helps us even more is sharing the show with a friend. If they like video game podcasts, or maybe they're a fan of Game Informer they grew up reading Game Informer and they don't know that we have a podcast. You can be like, hey, go check out the Game Informer show. It's pretty good. It's the best podcast of all time. So yeah, we appreciate you doing that for us. And if you do that, we want to say thanks and shout you out. This week, man, okay, there's a lot of news that's going to be coming up soon for Game Informer that we can't quite talk about yet, but maybe we'll have a new cover coming in the next couple weeks that you can check out. I feel like, that's probably a possibility, and that you'll want to go to GameInformer.com sometime.
Maybe on this coming
weeks.
Tuesday. I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I don't know, but you might want to bookmark it hypothetically for Tuesday. And then next week, hypothetically, we might have more details to share.
It's all theories,
Yeah. I don't know anything. I just work here,
They don't tell me nothing.
Yeah. If you want to follow us on social media, you can follow Kyle at Kyle M. Hilliard. Hilliard is spelled with 2 L's in the middle. You can follow Marcus at Marcus Stewart 7, as it sounds. And you can follow me at It's Van Aken. Of course, go and listen to All Things Nintendo, hosted by Brian Shea, our online content director. I believe this week they are doing a GoldenEye retrospective of some kind, so that sounds exciting because I guess it's GoldenEye's back. It's coming out on what?
Friday. Yeah. Depending on when you listen to this, it's probably already out. Yeah.
Yeah, so go check out all things Nintendo if you're a GoldenEye fan. And then lastly, shout out to our podcast editor, Matt, a.k.a. DJ Stormageddon. They host a couple gaming podcasts, one of which is Fun and Games, which is like their more general, kind of what you would expect in a more general gaming format. And then they have a BioWare podcast called Reignite. So go listen to those two and say thanks to Matt for us.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, one other additional quick little plug, Alex. I've been trying to do some stuff with the Game Informer TikTok account. If you use TikTok, go follow that. It's game_informer. So I've been trying to put stuff up there, as much as I can. So just go follow it.
I will
come up with a Game Informer TikTok dance.
No, we're good. I checked.
We could though. We might be good, Kyle, but we could.
I mean, if you want to see truncated versions of our reviews for Dead Space and Forspoken, you can go check those out on TikTok. But I mean, I'm not dancing.
And we do
there.
dance alongside the gameplay footage.
I'm not doing that.
Also,
I feel like we'd get more views.
One last plug. Kyle and I have just started our new Super Replay.
Oh,
we are playing Dino Crisis.
That's amazing.
Keeping on the PS1 survival horror train, we recorded the first episode today, so it should be on YouTube already when you're listening to this.
That's awesome.
Actually, speaking of TikTok, I got to go grab the clip of the T-Rex bursting through the window in the office. I'm gonna put that on TikTok.
It's a very, very funny moment in the stream. Yes. So yeah, check that out. Each week, playing that entire game. So.
And that is that. You can watch us live, twitch.tv/Game Informer, or go watch the VOD on our second YouTube channel, youtube.com/Game Informer shows. But YouTube has changed the way they do their URLs now, so you have to put the little @ symbol in front of Game Informer shows.
Really?
Yeah, they're making a change with new channels. It's annoying, but now you know. Let's get into listener emails. If you want to be part of the show, this is the part of the show that you get to influence what we talk about. So you can go and leave us an email. Podcast@GameInformer.com. You can join our Discord by subscribing to us on Twitch one time, and then you can go into the Game Informer show channel and leave us a question. Most weeks I put a call out and tag folks, and that's your chance to be a part of the show. So Judonkadonk on Discord asks, which studios are due for a genre flip like Tango? Of course, referencing Hi-Fi Rush.
I would say Naughty Dog. They've done a lot of since 2007 Uncharted. It's been third-person action adventure games. They haven't really done, I guess, really anything other than that since then. Before that, they were known for third-person platformers with Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter. So I think now the time has come to make the next shift, maybe a first-person game, or something, or.
They made a racing game as well. Oh, they made a few, I guess, if you count Crash Team Racing and Jak X Combat Racing.
Yeah, The Last of Us Racing. So it's if you don't come in first, you're last of us. That's what it says on the back of the box.
They can figure out those details.
Yeah, it's not our problem.
I can't wait to ride on my clicker cart.
The first racing game to ever make you cry. So, but yeah, I would love to see that studio. Naughty Dog's in that elite tier of anything they do, I pay attention to, whatever they announce. So I would love to see them do just, like I said, it's just complete genre flip. Whatever it is, I'm good on the third person action shooter, whatever for now. Now I say that, and the moment they announced Last of Us 3 or Uncharted 5, I'm like, yeah! But they could do something different. I would like that.
I think for me, Supergiant would be cool. They've kind of, with Hades 2 coming out, I mean, if you think about their games, they often do genre flips themselves.
Yeah.
Think of Pyre. I guess Pyre stands out as the biggest flip, but a lot of their games are kind of the top-down isometric action games.
What was Transistor? I played very
Was that
little
turn-based?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
It was like turn-based strategy, but a very weird take on turn-based strategy. But that was still top-down isometric.
Gotcha.
I mean, they've used that viewpoint, even if it's like a different genre, with the exception of Pyre.
Like one thing I think that Super Giant, I would love to see is like a 3D game from them of some kind. I think that'd be really interesting because I mean they have these like really talented 2D artists, obviously, and maybe they could bring in like a couple 3D artists and like combine those forces to like do something really interesting looking.
I would love to see like if it was like cell shading, but it was like Gen Z's art style.
Gen Z's art style?
Well, she's like she is the Super Giant.
Oh,
artist.
God,
like that
I'm
art
sorry.
style is her.
No, I'm with you, Alex. I was like, I thought you meant like the whole
group of
generation.
people.
Oh no! Her name is Gen Z.
Yeah.
I
was thinking the group
as in
of
like
kids.
Jennifer Z.
Yeah. Okay,
but,
I'm with you.
Okay, yeah, but I mean like her art style applied to 3D models in like
would
a
be really
cel-shaded
cool
kind of way.
Yeah,
I would
like
want,
see how that
man,
would look.
like now that you're talking about them, because they're so good at like 2D art, I would love like a 2D hand-drawn platformer from them, like a Metroid or like a Metroid inspired, which I know every indie studio has done, but like, man, that would look so good.
They haven't yet.
Yeah.
That's really cool. What about you, Kyle? What's your pick?
I was kind of thinking of like, now the name is slipping. The XCOM developers. Why can't I think?
Firaxis.
Firaxis.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool just to see them sort of stretch their wings a little and make like an action game. You know, like just take their sort of game design know-how and apply it to an action game as opposed to strategy or sim. You know,
Didn't they do that XCOM Declassified game, or was that outsourced
I don't think
to a
that was
different
them.
team?
I think that was outsourced to a different team. That's an interesting.
Okay, because
point,
that was like XCOM, but just as a straight up
Gosh.
action like shooter.
That
Right?
is
A
like-
first-person shooter.
That is like the epitome of like, you remember that game?
Yeah, right. He really came and went because it was just kind of okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
2K
I couldn't remember
Marin.
if that was them or not.
No, that's
Marin?
2K Marin, who did Bioshock. Yeah, Bioshock 2, and then XCOM Declassified. What a weird thing. Should we replay that game? Should
I
we
was
super
gonna say that sounds
replay?
like a prime replay candidate.
But just I'm not a big strategy tactics guy, so I just think it would be cool to see they are obviously very talented game designers. Like it would be cool to see them apply those skills to something outside of their comfort zone. You know?
Yeah,
Is the easiest genre flip now to just make your franchise into a Musou?
I hope
Yeah,
not.
because you just
Like
call
Nintendo has figured that out of like, oh, we can just.
I
get
hope
mileage out
not
of
because
it.
I do not like those type of games.
Imagine if The Last of Us was a Musou and you just had like a billion clickers, and then Joel is just swinging a bat and they all go flying by like the dozen.
Oh my god.
I mean, I wouldn't say I'd play it. I played a bunch of those movies.
The Last of Us Warriors.
No, I hate that.
You say that
next
now,
question.
and you say it after the game comes out. But
Zachary Pliggy asks, the PS1 survival horror era holds a special place in my heart. Do you think current survival horror games capture the same vibe, both spooky and campy, as that previous era? If not, do you think it's for better or worse?
that's an interesting question. Campy, I feel like, is almost out the window at this point. I can't remember the last time. Like, even
too.
Signalis, which is like the closest thing I would say to like
Was not campy.
not campy at all. And I don't really mind that. The campiness is like a product of the era of like
The times,
figuring out
yeah.
like how to make video games, you know?
Yeah. Capcom's retained that with Resident Evil. Like even the newer ones, they have like
Yeah.
Ethan Winters is such a cheeseball of a dude in his weird quips. Like
I guess I do still take 7 and 8 so seriously though, but you are right. Like it is like a tale of witches and werewolves, and it goes off the rails in a way that I
Literary Village
love.
is
But
Ethan Winters saying the dumbest things like all the time.
yeah, that's a good
And his
point.
hand, he loses his hand like so many times.
Yeah, but that's guys. You got to beat 8. It's all explained. Don't worry about it.
No, I beat it. I still have questions, but I finished it.
But
I did too.
they all feel different now. Like I think the closest I feel like it got to feeling old school is like the beginning of Resident Evil 7. I feel like the first couple hours where you're just in the house of 7 was the closest to me it felt like a modernized version of classic Resident Evil, if that makes sense. Because it was like
sure.
the single location and like it just I feel like that's what was the success of 7 is like, wow, this feels like old school Resident Evil, but it looks great. It's first person. It's different enough, you know. But yeah, as far as like Dead Space is an action game. Resident Evil 4 was an action game. I'm sure the remake is going to feel like an action game. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, there was stuff like there were definitely attempts to like emulate that, like the Evil Within stuff. Even though those are probably they're definitely on the action end. There's like spooky moments in those games where you can tell they're trying to take it back to, I guess, old school survival horror. I mean, we got like the Silent Hill 2 remake happening, and we'll see how that goes, of like if they fiddle with the, I don't know, action to horror ratio in any like big way. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely still room for it. I don't know how successful Signalis was. It's hard when it's on Game Pass, right? But people love that game, so even if it's like a window to more like retro style revivals of it, I'd be down for that. But in terms of like just brand new experiences from like a AAA dev that's like, I'm just gonna make the thing that used to scare me as a kid, I don't know. I would like to see more of those. But yeah, they do tend to, it's either they get really actiony or they go way the hard opposite, where you get the sort of Amnesia style stuff of like you're defenseless and there is no combat, you just run and hide, basically, which is also not quite what that era was either.
I don't know. That's how we've been playing Dino Crisis, Marcus. I walk into a room, I see a Velociraptor, I press R2 to do a quick turn, and I leave.
As you would if you saw one in real life.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for the show this week. We had one more question, but I think we're going to save it for next week. Thank you, everybody, for writing in. And stay tuned for next week. Sorry about these episodes going up on later than usual lately. It's just been release schedules. We've been wanting to talk about certain games, and we've had guests, and sometimes it just makes sense to hold the episode for a day so that we can kind of meet embargoes and all that kind of fun stuff. So thanks for your patience. We will see you next Thursday, though, for sure. Of course, review the show, go follow the crew on social, share it with a friend, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.